Hello and welcome to this ZENworks Service Desk migration to ZSD 24.1. We'll have both details and demonstration in this particular video. So the agenda will be to see the ZENworks latest features in 24.1, ZSD version upgrade roadmap, some system upgrade details, methods, tasks, demonstration, and then some documents and references. So let's get started. Some of the feature enhancements are in the user and admin portal, as well as in the customer portal. And then there's some technical updates for upkeep. So we have some focused on reporting, and we have some other areas that we really focused on some details in cosmetics and getting some privileges in there. So these are the different ones. If you wish to see the feature enhancements in detail, look for our ZENworks 24.1 What's New video. So ZENworks Service Desk references using the multi-version upgrade roadmap. So let's look at the roadmap and where we've been. So we go back to 7.5 when it became an appliance model. And then we did side-by-sides for the appliance on major releases. And you can see that here we're on 24.1. Every major release is an appliance side-by-side, which is what we'll display today. The minor upgrades are the .2, .3, and .4 releases, whereas the major releases are now the .1 releases. If you're at a lower version, this is what you'd want to map out for your migration to get to 24.1, is beyond either 7.5 to get to 8.1, beyond 8.1 to get to 8.3, and beyond 8.3 to get to 24.1, or their updated versions like 8.3x or 2.3x. But those will need to be side by side. So if you're currently at 8.12, you'll need to do a side by side to 8.3.0 and then a side by side to 24.1. You don't have to do the subsequent smaller minor updates because you're jumping to a new appliance which will have all the latest features in it already. If you're doing if you're at 8.3 or 23.x, you can go from any one of those directly to 24.1. These are some detailed slides about system methods, what kind of methods we use, what kind of jetty and appliance types we're using. So this just is more of a reference for you as we go through these particular slides. This one is the system methods, and obviously it's a side-by-side that we're trying to go to. Next is our system server OS. You can track the OS this way. We're currently on SLES 12 SP5. The next one, which will be 25.1, will be advancing that to SLES 15. Then we have the hypervisor, what's supported in these versions, as well as the system database. We did upgrade in 24x to Postgres 15.5. And as we look at the system RAM and disk and CPU cores, back when we moved to the appliance only model, we upgraded that to minimum requirements of 4 gig, 2 volumes, and 40 gigabytes of disk space, as well as 2 CPU cores. And then the reference of the file customization location. So as you move through, we've made the process better to transfer over and migrate these particular files. But if you need to, on the earlier versions, hold on to these, this is where they reside. So this is just a handy tip of getting you where you need to be by backing up those customization files if you've done any customizations. Let's go into the upgrade discussion. The upgrade strategy reminders. Again, this is a side-by-side migration. This method is used in the .1 releases. We're not doing an in-place method, which would use the online updates, because we actually upgraded the database to 15.5. So we want to make sure that we get you the proper settings for that. So we're doing an actual migration. You want to verify the system and database requirements. Each upgrade keeps the system files, security files, and database schema current. So as you do your upgrades, that's automatically done. OS and product security updates are done via the online updates in a 3-month cadence. And of course, when you put in a new appliance, it has all the updated as well. Appliances have the embedded Postgres databases pre-configured if you're using the embedded, and if you're using an external, then you don't have to worry about that so much. Appliances require an additional virtual disk VA storage ever since version 7.5. Administrator and passwords, make sure that they're available for when you're doing your upgrade for the OS, the systems, the DBA, just in case you run into anything, you may need to contact them or have those available so that you can take care of those things should you call support. Some customization files may not be migrated, so be aware of that. All right, some other strategy reminders is verify these things like performing the checksum anytime you download a file for integrity, time sync between servers in the database, disk space required for the appliance before the migration. You need to make sure you have 5 GB free. Database space, making sure you maintain database space so it could grow. ZSD server and database server are on the same subnets. And then leave the external database running if applicable when you do this side-by-side migration. So when we power down the appliance, keep that database running because when we migrate to the other appliance, we want to make sure we can connect to it. Post-upgrade, verify the connected system. If you have email set up or ZCM connections for imports or ZRS, make sure you verify those connections. You're going to need to re-register to the online update channel because it's going to be a new channel for the 24.x, and then update corporate systems information in your binder, in your corporate binder, and then have a backup plan. Backup plans are fairly simple because should it go awry, you can power down the new appliance, you can power up the old appliance, everything is fine, and you can troubleshoot with support to find out why the new appliance didn't work. And then we have some pre-upgrade tasks, right? So if you're using an external database and that database version is not supported in 24.1, upgrade the database first before doing the ZSD upgrade. ZSD should be at version 8.3x or 23x before going to 24.1. Identify network configurations and NTP settings. Verify expiration dates of any internal or external certificates. Make sure they're not coming close to expiration or something that may hang us up when we do the migration. Identify and document the customizations. Maybe do some screenshots of all the ZSD connected systems. And those things are like email, LDAP, OpenID, if you have two form factor authentication, those types of things. Backup and copy the service desk appliance server and the database. Of course, the internal Postgres is pretty much backed up if you take a snapshot of the appliance. And then the external database, make sure you have a backup or copy of that. And then the customization files, if applicable. Again, check the reference page for added details. So again, we're doing a side-by-side and we're migrating to a new appliance. Used each year.1 version. You will run in this process a pre-migration script. In this case, it's going to be 24.1. The older system version of VA storage, which is that second disk, will need to be copied to 24.1 location. You're going to re-register the online update channel. Database schema gets updated and the major components are ready to be used. So here are the steps for migrating. Upgrade tasks would include in your current ZSD production server, so this is your current production server, not the 24.1. In the terminal console, you're going to download, copy, and run the pre-migration RPM file. And once you do that with RPM-IHV, that prepares the second drive for the update. You're going to go ahead and power down the ZENworks Service Desk production server. You're going to copy that VA storage second disk drive to the new 24.1 appliance. You're going to power up 24.1 appliance. There'll be 2 pages that the wizard will stop at, accepting the license and entering the root and SDadmin passwords. After that, it should go through and complete the migration, assuming the identity of your old production server onto the ZSD 24.1. Then you could log in to the administration console, that's 9443, select the technician portal tile, and verify that the message says database has been successfully upgraded to version 24.1. Once you have that, you're pretty much good to go, but you do want to verify some things like the NTP settings and network. Make sure you have communication, right? Update the license only if the entitlement's changed. Apply the online updates. In order to do that, you'll need to re-register 24.1 appliance with the same activation key, which is found in SLD, and then set any online update channel schedules if you want. You want to verify and restore custom settings. This is obviously conditional if you have custom settings. There's banners, CSS files, service desk server configurations for Java settings. There's other files in there that you may want to hang on to just to make sure if it didn't come over that you're able to restore those. But very few are needed at this point in time. And then configure the new features. You're ready to go. In this case, the major features were reports and reset SLA and a couple of other things. The post-upgrade task is verify and restore external system communications. So that would be database connection, that will be obvious. Email configuration, that's obvious as well. And along with LDAP settings. Those three are core components to ZSD. But then there may be things like AMI imports or ZENworks import, OpenID, single sign-on. A ZRS, because your version has changed, you want to go back into ZRS config and make sure you get the correct version for ZSD when it makes its connection. And then other system communications like two-form factor authentication, federation, etc. After you're all said and done and you have a successful upgrade, be sure to perform a successful backup or snapshot of the new ZSD 24.1 server. And of course the database, if it's external, you want to make sure you have a backup of that and any components. And then, of course, update the company's ZSD system configuration documentation. That runs it through the pre and install and post upgrade tasks. Now we're going to do a quick ZSD migration using those tasks. So let's see how we put them to use in our demonstration. Let's start off by looking at a current system that we're configuring, and we're going to upgrade to 24.1. You can see we're at 23.4 here. So we're going to move to 24.1 on this device. Now this is a side-by-side install, so we're going to prop up another appliance. So even let's go to a different system and we'll see that this is at 23.3, which shows some online updates. Now you don't have to run these ahead of time. If you're a lower compatible version to get to 24.1, you don't need to run this because you're going to do a side-by-side, and the side-by-side will prop up a new appliance which gives you all the latest security patches and all the latest version of ZSD. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay, and so as we log into the portal, we'll go ahead and check a few things out. We want to make sure that our email is configured properly, everything's working fine, because we want something to fall back on. We'll check other things like see what the licenses is. You can see we're at 23.4. The database type, we can see is PostgreSQL. And the user sources, we'll go ahead and give that a test as well. We can see that everything's working fine there too. Now, if you have AAF sources or password self-service or SSO, check those out as well. And any AMI or ZENworks, make sure you test those, and ZENworks import, make sure you test those. Make sure they're working before you start, and that's a good baseline. At which point, take a snapshot or a backup of your server, and then you'll start the process. So we're going to do that now. Let's take a look at a few things on the drive too to make sure that we're looking good. We can check the disk size, make sure we have the proper disk size, and we can see that under the VA storage. We're only at 2% use. We have 46 gig available, so that's a good size. If we look at the Postgres, we can see we're at 13.12. So we're going to be upgrading that with this next version as well. If we look at Tomcat, we can see what version we have there as well as Jetty. And finally, we can go ahead and see what we're doing as far as the appliance, the CAF, or the Common Appliance Framework. We're at 2.1.1.2. And then finally, we can see what we have for our current release in OS. We can see here we're at 23.4, and we could see that we're currently on /12 SP5. Okay, so those are some of the commands you can use. They're in the documentation as well. Now with that, we want to make sure that we've downloaded the RPM, the prereq, and we're going to copy that over to our appliance. So we're going to upload this, and we're going to run that. And what that does is it prepares the appliance to be upgraded. All right, so if we go cd/temp and we do RPM minus IHV service desk prereq RPM, we can go ahead and give it a run. This prepares, before power down, the drive that we're going to copy over. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and shut this down. So if we go on over here, we can do a shutdown. And now that it will be prepared for the upgrade. All right, we'll wait for that to happen. Now we can see that this is shut down. We'll go ahead and close this. Now we're going to find the actual second drive on here. So we have 2 drives. We need to copy this drive here. So in order to do that, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to capture this just so I have an idea of where that is. Then I'm going to go into my storage. Now I have already downloaded from SLD both the prereq, right, that we just installed, and the appliance OVA. In this case, we're using ESXi. All right, so I've already installed this or opened this up, as you can see here, but there's only one hard disk. We're going to add the second hard disk from our original production server, and we know where that is, so we're going to go to storage. We're going to go to data store browser, data store, we're going to 87, and we're going to go, what's up here? This is 007, we're going to grab 004. There it is. And we're going to copy. All right, and we're going to tell it to copy it to, I believe I put it on disk 2. No, I put it on disk data store. Right here. So we're going to copy it to here. And we're going to let it do its thing. We have to wait for this to complete the copy. This is that second volume. Then we're going to attach that second volume to this particular new appliance. All right. And what it does is it actually assumes the identity of your production server with the IP address, all the settings, and we'll be good to go. We'll go ahead and wait for this to complete. Give it a minute to do the complete copy. You can see now that that has been copied successfully down here. We're going to go over to the new appliance that we installed. We're going to go ahead and add a second disk, an existing disk, and it's going to be in where we copied it. Select, and we're going to hit save. Now we can power it up and we can see how it will automatically assume the identity. So let's go ahead and power it up. All the prereqs have been met, so we'll let it go through its cycle here. The one thing we're going to have to do is actually a couple of things. Putting in the root password for this appliance and the SDadmin password for this appliance, and that's at an OS level. And then we will also redirect to identify that second disk. But everything else, all the network and stuff, will be consumed from that second disk save that the prereq took care of. So let's just watch this come on up, and we'll get started here in a second to put in the passwords. Here's our passwords. Go ahead and put those in. And you could see the IP address was already transferred over. I didn't have to click a thing. It just basically brought up to view. And now it's moving on to configuring the time zone, and it'll also configure the disk. It happened to see the second disk, and we're going to go ahead and run a few things to see what our versions are now. Had this been an initial install, you'd still create a blank second disk, and it would ask you for all the information for the network and the time zone and so forth. So this is really the same process as an install, making sure you have a second disk, whether it's blank or whether it's migrated from another server, but you'd get to this point ultimately. And once we log in, we're on the new appliance now. Let's go ahead and check what we have. And you can see we're still at SLES 12SP5, but we're at version 2.4.1 now of Service Desk. Okay, if we look at the CAF, we can see that we're at 2.1.1.2 still. If we look at Jetty, and if we look at Tomcat, this particular one will have the Postgres version 15.5. Now what we can do is we can go on over to our appliance and we can log in to see that particular install is complete. Log in as our root password. We can see that we are all set up and we're at 24.1. Again, your service desk configuration shows the database as a Postgres internal, so we're good there too. Now you will have to re-register for your online update. So when you do that, since it's a new appliance, you'll put in the appropriate information and register so that you can get the quarterly updates of security patches and some features. Okay. Now as we go to the technician portal, we can see that the database has been successfully upgraded and we can hit close there. Now if we look at log in as our supervisor or administrator, we can see we do have all the customizations there. We can go back into our setup. We can do a test. Email server, that's good. We can see our license. We can see our database. Our user source, we'll go ahead and tap into that, make sure that that test's okay. And we're good there as well. And again, if you have any AF, PSS, SSO, or AMI that you need to do, be sure to double check those as well. Now take either screenshots to have them in your documentation, but after you're done, you should be able to go on into the user and have those new features up to 24.1 that you didn't have before. And the easy way to tell for 24.1 is reports, KPI, we have an all request summary, which is our new report type. So I know we do have the 24.1 and it's successful. Now I want to make sure that I take a backup of this so I have it in this state. If anything should fail, you can always go back to your 23.x or 8.3x so that you can keep running in production and we can determine why something failed in your particular environment. And that's the upgrade for ZSD 24.1. And the following slides are basically supporting documents, videos, and training so that you can have some resources at your fingertips if you need to. These are command line tool references, some of the command lines for checking component versions for Jetty, Tomcat, Postgres, the OS, Service Desk, and so forth. And some of the commands for checking services themselves to see if they're active, started, stopped. And then there's a cool solution down here to explain managing the system CTL if you're not familiar with system CTL. Remember, restarting services can be done in the appliance admin console. It's a restart services button. These are a listing of file references should you need to know where some of those custom files are, or some of those configuration files where you want to make sure some settings are set, or maybe afterwards you see something on here that you would want to adjust. These are the different logs and where to go to get those logs adjusted. All right, and there's typically TIDs related to this that will tell you how to adjust those particular things like the heap and the memory modifications and so forth. The ZSD system logging information, of course, debug logs, if you're talking with support, gather them up through the setup report log and actually select the export. This actually doesn't just bring in the lifetime log, but all the archives and information about your environment, which helps support tremendously. There's also ways to adjust the logging archive in this particular TID 24083. And then if you need to set things in debug mode, that TID also has information about that. The lifetime and service desk service log locations are in TIDs 7018199. And that includes some things like log export button, administration console log style, appliance and schema upgrade is in the lifetime logs, and then product upgrade logs and other component logs are in those various locations. And there's a TID also on service desk memory settings, which was also in the previous slide. And then some video references for system planning, for administration, new end user and user guide, all for 24.1. ZSD with ZENworks, connecting it to ZENworks and importing items that way. ZENworks store guide, the ZSD customization cookbook, which has different configuration scenarios, branding and troubleshooting options, and then a couple of videos of commonly asked questions with some scenarios. Don't let your service desk tickets stall, and be able to assign a delegate, dynamic forms, how to create them, and then reporting on service desk. Community reference sites, there's the lookbook, there's public forums, there's a YouTube channel, there's trainings and tutorials that are free, and ZENworks Service Desk. And there's obviously some other documentation here that you can look up for product documentation and README for 24.1, as well as the different cookbooks getting you all the way up to where you need to be in case you need to go back. If you are interested in ZSD betas, please email us at zen@opentext.com and let us know that, and we'd be happy to invite you into those. And all of those commands that we did, both in the slides and the tasks that we performed, you'll find those in the ZENworks Service Desk 24.1 Upgrade Cookbook, which is TID 26256. So feel free to go to that. That has step-by-steps as well as a documentation. Thank you for your time today. This concludes the presentation for ZENworks Service Desk Upgrade to version 24.1.